Why was everyone missing? The range was hot brass casings bouncing off concrete, sunlight turning the air into a shimmering haze. Every Marine on the line had just failed to qualify. The sound of rifles faded into a frustrated silence. The range master's voice cut through the stillness. Cease fire. Weapons on safe. Corporal Maya Chun stood 30 feet behind the firing line, her shadow long across the dust. She wasn't supposed to be part of the group. She had already qualified at Pendleton West, but she watched anyway. She watched because something was wrong. The targets downrange were untouched silhouettes, white in the desert sun. Staff Sergeant Dalton moved past each firing position, his expression sharpening with every score he called out. 23 hits out of 40, Martinez. You need 36 to qualify. His tone was flat. The next Marine had 18 hits. The next, even worse. Chun's eyes followed the pattern, every Marine jerking the trigger, flinching before recoil, anticipating the shot instead of controlling it. Basic errors. Mistakes born from comfort, from the illusion of being good enough. She crossed her arms, the weight of silence pressing heavier than the heat. The range master, Gunnery Sergeant Torres, barked at the group. Half of you still haven't qualified. This is basic marksmanship, Marines, not sniper school. Stationary targets at known distances. If you can't hit these, what happens when it's not paper out there? No one answered. One Marine, a lance corporal named Bradley, slammed his rifle on the bench. Things shoots left, he muttered. Windage is off. The same rifle you used last week, someone asked. Bradley didn't answer. Chun adjusted her cover and stepped closer to the firing line. She'd been quiet for nearly an hour, listening, observing, waiting for someone to take ownership. No one did. Let me try that rifle. 6 heads turned, the conversation stopped, even the wind seemed to pause. Bradley frowned. You serious? Torres studied her, arms folded. You're Chun, right? Just got here from Pendleton West. That's right. You need to qualify too. Already qualified, Gunny, just offering to check the rifle. Bradley scoffed. No offense, but if we can't hit with it, what makes you think you can? Before anyone could answer, Torres lifted a hand. You understand this is for score, Corporal, not some casual plinking session. 200, 300, 500 yards. Heat shimmer, crosswind about 8 knots. I understand. And you think you can do better than Marines who have been training here for 6 months. I think I can tell you if the rifle's the problem, Chun said evenly. Dalton leaned closer to Torres, smirking. $20 says she doesn't make it past the first magazine. Torres almost smiled. You're on. He turned to Chun. You follow range protocol exactly. Any safety violation, you're off my range. Clear. Bradley handed her his rifle with visible reluctance. Chun accepted it like it was something sacred, not mechanical. She inspected the chamber, confirmed the magazine seating, adjusted the sights. The rifle was fine, perfectly zeroed. The problem wasn't the weapon. It never was. She stepped forward. The Marines shifted to make space. The world narrowed to the rectangle of concrete before her and the distant silhouettes waiting to be proven wrong. Behind her, she could feel the skepticism, the silent challenge. The first whispers started. Let's see if she's all talk. Probably just trying to show off. Give her credit for confidence at least. Torres raised his hand. Shooter, you have 40 rounds. Targets at 2, 3, and 500. Qualification standard is 36 hits. Ready on the left, ready on the right, ready on the firing line. Chun settled into prone, the rifle's weight familiar against her shoulder. Her breathing slowed. She counted her heartbeats. 8-knot wind, east to west. She adjusted. Commence firing. The first shot cracked through the desert air, clean, deliberate. The echo rolled across the valley. Through her scope, she saw the target register, center mass perfect. She didn't stop. Second shot, third. Each trigger press was identical, smooth, precise, detached. Behind her, the chatter faded into silence. Torres leaned into his spotting scope, adjusting focus. "All hits," he said almost to himself. "Center mass." Dalton frowned. "Lucky start." Chun fired again. The rhythm didn't change, controlled breathing, clean break, follow-through. She wasn't shooting for show, she was chasing stillness, the kind that only exists between heartbeats. By the time the sixth shot landed, Tor's jaw had tightened. He didn't look up from the scope. "Grouping's tight," he murmured. Dalton leaned over. "How tight?" Torres gestured him forward. "See for yourself." Dalton bent to the scope. A low whistle escaped him. "That's a 2-inch group at 200 yards. The conversation behind them stilled completely. The range, usually loud with overlapping commands and gunfire, went eerily quiet. Marines on adjacent lines began to notice. Heads turned. Chun swapped magazines without breaking her position. 3 seconds, muscle memory, breath steady. Torres called out, "Transition to 300. She adjusted her sights, recalculated for wind drift. The mirage on the horizon shimmered like heat waves off asphalt. She took her time. "Continue firing." The rifle cracked again. "Hit center mass," Torres confirmed. She didn't react, didn't acknowledge the observers. Her world was a tunnel of scope and breath, trigger and recoil. At 15 rounds, other Marines had gathered behind her, silent now, not mocking but reverent. Dalton whispered, "That's impossible." By 20 shots, she hadn't missed once. A sergeant major arrived, drawn by the unnatural hush. He spoke to Torres. "What's happening here?" Torres didn't look away. "New arrival, sir. Shooting someone else's rifle. Perfect score so far." The sergeant major raised an eyebrow. "How many rounds?" 20. He moved to the spotting scope and stared for a long moment. "Who is she?" "Corporal Chun, just transferred in, already qualified at Pendleton West." The sergeant major didn't move. "Then why's she shooting?" "Checking a rifle that shoots left, sir." The senior Marine exhaled through his nose. "Clearly it doesn't." Torres called out, "Transition to 500. That was where most Marines started missing. The distance punished arrogance. Even minor errors became amplified. The wind gusted unpredictably now, shifting every few seconds. Chun watched the flag at the far end of the range, waited for the lull and pressed the trigger. "Hit," the sergeant major said quietly. Bradley shook his head. "That's not possible." Dalton muttered, "It's happening." Shot after shot, the rifle barked and echoed. Each hit was confirmed. At the 35th, the entire range had stopped firing. Marines from other lanes, instructors, even bystanders had drifted in to watch. The only sound left was her rifle and the whisper of wind. 35 for 35, Torres said, voice low. 5 rounds left. Dalton's voice was a whisper. "If she makes all 40, that's historic." Torres didn't reply, he just watched. Chun chambered the 36th round, breathed once, fired. Hit. 37th hit. 38th hit. 39th hit. She paused before the last, not for drama, just to breathe. The 40th shot echoed across the valley. The bullet traveled 500 yards of distorted air, caught the edge of a gust, and still struck center mass. The sergeant major exhaled. 40 for 40, perfect score. No one cheered, no one spoke. It felt wrong to break the silence. Chun cleared the rifle, set it down gently, and stood. Her knees ached from 20 minutes of stillness. Torres walked downrange alone. He carried back the target sheets himself. When he laid them on the bench, even the most skeptical Marines leaned forward to see. At 200 yards, every round clustered inside 2 inches. At 300, 4 inches. At 500, where even experts missed half their shots, the grouping was no larger than a handprint. The sergeant major studied the paper. "Instructor-level precision," he said quietly. Better than instructor level. Bradley swallowed hard. So, the rifle doesn't shoot left. No, Torres said flatly. The rifle shoots exactly where you point it. Martinez traced a finger over one of the targets. I've been on this range 3 years. My best is 38. How long have you been shooting? Since I was 12, Chun said. My father was a competition shooter before he joined the Corps. What kind of competitions? Precision rifle, some national, some international. The gunnery sergeant from 3rd Battalion stepped forward. Wait, Maya Chun, Southwest Regional Precision Champion last year, beat Scout Snipers and Special Forces. The words rippled through the crowd. Bradley's face flushed red. Dalton stared at the target sheets like they held some secret formula. SGT Madge Sullivan finally spoke. So, Corporal Chun, why didn't you mention your record when you arrived? She thought for a moment. Didn't seem relevant, sir. You asked if I could check the rifle. That's what I did. Sullivan almost smiled. Carry on. He walked off, leaving silence behind him. Torres finally clapped his hands once, breaking the stillness. All right, you've all seen what right looks like. Back to your lanes, no more excuses. But the atmosphere had changed. The casual complaints were gone. In their place, quiet respect. As the Marines reset their stations, Bradley stepped up beside Chun. I owe you an apology. I blamed the rifle. She gave a small nod. Easy mistake, happens all the time. Dalton walked up next, holding the $20 bill he'd won from the bet. He handed it to her. Use it for ammo or range fees. I misjudged you. Not necessary, Staff Sergeant. Yeah, it is. He extended his hand. Welcome to 1st Battalion for real this time. Chun shook his hand. Thank you. By evening, the sound of gunfire returned, but different now. Focused. Determined. The Marines who'd once fired carelessly now breathed between shots, checked sight picture, corrected grip. Torres watched from the observation platform beside Chun. The sun dipped low, painting the desert gold. You changed something here today, he said. Chun shook her head. Just shot a rifle, range master. He smiled faintly. No, you showed them what's possible. Her eyes followed the line of Marines, each one shooting with renewed purpose. The wind had shifted, the light was fading, but they kept firing. Somewhere behind the sound of rifles and echoing brass, the old standard of good enough had died quietly. And as the last round cracked across the range, even Chun couldn't deny it. Something in the air had changed forever. Why were 23 Marines waiting for her the next morning? The classroom smelled faintly of coffee and gun oil. Rows of notebooks lay open, pens ready. These were riflemen, machine gunners, and corporals who'd been shooting for years, yet every eye fixed on the young woman who had quietly rewritten their definition of expert. Corporal Maya Chun stood at the front of the room, her uniform immaculate, her voice calm. No PowerPoint, no slides, just a whiteboard and a marker. 4 words appeared across the top in neat capital letters. Breathing, position, sight picture, trigger control. These are the only things that matter, she said. Everything else is just detail. Master these 4 and you'll shoot expert every time. Ignore them and you'll struggle forever. A lance corporal near the back raised a hand. What about wind, ma'am, or range estimation? Those matter, Chun said, but they're secondary. You can't compensate for wind if you're jerking the trigger. You can't correct for distance if you can't breathe right. Start with the foundation. Build everything else on that. Her tone wasn't commanding. It was deliberate, almost gentle. But every word carried precision, like a well-placed shot. She drew a simple breathing rhythm on the board. Inhale, exhale, natural pause. Most shooters hold their breath before they fire, she continued. That's wrong. Your body's most stable at the pause between breaths. That's when your heart rate drops. That's when the rifle's still. Private Williams leaned forward. How long that pause supposed to be? 2 seconds, maybe 3 if you're calm, that's your window. If you miss it, breathe again. Never force a shot. Another Marine spoke up. What about stance, Corporal? I've seen different instructors teach different things. Chun nodded. Position is personal. Principles are universal. Your body should support the rifle naturally. If you're straining, you're doing it wrong. The rifle should rest in place with minimal effort. If you're in proper position, you can stay there for minutes without fatigue. She set the marker down and dropped into a prone position on the floor, using her forearm as an imaginary rifle. Support elbow directly under the rifle, body angled slightly, not square to the target, everything relaxed but stable. A murmur went through the room. Marines who had been stiff, formal, now leaned forward like students watching a master at work. Bradley, his pride still recovering from yesterday, raised a hand. And sight picture. Chun stood, brushing off her sleeve. Sight picture's about consistency. Some prefer a sharp reticle, blurred target, others the opposite. Doesn't matter what you choose, only that you do it the same way every time. Your eye needs to see the same image before every shot. That's how you build predictability. She wrote a number on the board, 1,000. This is how many perfect dry-fire repetitions you need to build muscle memory. 1,000 trigger presses. No ammo, just practice. Once you can press the trigger without disturbing the reticle, you're ready to shoot live rounds. A corporal from the 2nd platoon frowned. That's a lot of practice, ma'am. How many hours do you spend on PT each week? 5 or 6. And that's just to stay qualified, Chun said. Not to become elite, just to stay average. Shooting's no different. You can maintain barely passing scores with minimal effort, or you can dedicate real time and become exceptional. That's your choice. The room was silent. You could hear the scratch of pens on paper. Staff Sergeant Dalton stood near the back, arms folded, watching. He finally spoke. What was your own training routine when you were competing? Dry fire every day, 20 minutes minimum. Live fire twice a week when possible. Hundreds of rounds, all recorded and analyzed. Competition isn't about showing off, it's a mirror. It reveals the truth about how much work you've really done. Martinez, sitting near the middle, flipped to a fresh page. Trigger control's my worst area, he said. I always pull off target when I press. What's the fix? Chun picked up a pen, holding it like a rifle trigger. Most Marines tense their entire hand when they fire. That moves the rifle. You need isolation, just the trigger finger moves. The rest of the hand stays still. She demonstrated a slow squeeze, steady pressure straight back. Dry fire. Watch the reticle. If it jumps when you press, you're tensing too much. Do it until it doesn't move. Then do it 1,000 more times until it's automatic. Someone asked quietly, what about the mental side? You looked calm yesterday, even with everyone watching. Chun paused before answering. Mental discipline matters more than skill. On a qualification range, 30 other Marines are watching. That pressure destroys people who only train technique. You need to train your mind to ignore it. Breathe. Focus on the fundamentals. One shot at a time, everything else disappears. She looked around the room. Yesterday, I didn't think about the crowd. I didn't think about a perfect score. I thought about one breath, one trigger press, one shot. Then I repeated it 39 times. A silence settled, deep, respectful silence. Dalton's voice broke it softly. That's the lesson most instructors forget to teach. Torres, the range master, stepped through the door, checking his watch. We've got 30 minutes left, he said. Care to show them what that looks like on the line, Corporal? Outside, the desert heat had returned. Chun walked them to the same firing line where she'd shot the day before. The air shimmered again, the smell of cordite and sand heavy in every breath. Torres had already set up a single lane, one rifle, 10 rounds. Watch her breathing, Torres told the group. Watch her trigger finger. Chun took her time setting up. No rush, no performance. She loaded the magazine, checked her chamber, settled into prone. The world went quiet again. She fired. Through the spotting scope, Tors confirmed the hit. Center mass, 300 yards. She fired again, and again, 10 shots in total, each separated by the rhythm of breath and heartbeat. Tors turned from the scope. 10 shots, 10 hits, 6-inch grouping. She cleared the rifle and stood, turning to face the group. That's what fundamentals look like when they're consistent. Nothing fancy, no tricks, just breathing, position, sight picture, trigger control. Martinez raised a hand. Can we schedule extra sessions? Tors nodded before Chun could answer. Twice a week, starting tomorrow, Corporal Chun will rotate through every company. Attendance voluntary, but if you show up, you commit. No half effort. A few Marines exchanged glances. Then one by one they nodded. As the class dispersed, Bradley stayed behind, adjusting his stance under Chun's quiet guidance. Williams asked about timing his breathing. A corporal from 3rd Platoon wanted gear recommendations. Each question met a calm, patient answer. Dalton waited until the group was nearly gone. When he approached, his voice carried an unusual softness. I've been an instructor for 3 years, he said. I thought I understood marksmanship. Yesterday and today proved I was teaching the bare minimum and calling it mastery. Chun shook her head. You were teaching what you were taught, but the standard can always rise. He nodded. Then I want to observe every one of your sessions, learn what you're teaching, update how I train others. You're welcome anytime, Staff Sergeant. Tors joined them as Dalton walked off. You realize what you started, he said. These Marines are motivated in a way I haven't seen in years. They want to be better. You lit something. Chun looked out across the range, where the same Marines were now staying late, firing on their own time. The sound of gunfire carried differently now, less frustration, more focus. They saw what's possible, she said quietly. That changes everything. Tors nodded, and you're the one who showed them. She didn't answer, but she knew he was right. 3 days later, she was called to battalion headquarters. The gunny from 3rd Battalion met her outside the Co's office. Lieutenant Colonel Reeves wants to see you, he said. Something about a demonstration. When she entered, 2 men stood waiting, Reeves behind his desk, and beside him, a captain with a sniper insignia on his uniform. Older, harder, the kind of man who had spent years behind glass scopes and observation hides. Reeves looked up from a file. Corporal Chun, heard some impressive reports about you. Perfect 40 on the range. First one in 5 years. Yes, sir. The captain spoke next. Captain Harrison, Scout Sniper Platoon Commander. I'm not questioning your score, Corporal, your targets were verified. But perfect qualifications happen under controlled conditions. I'm interested in what happens under stress. Chun stood at attention. Understood, sir. Reeves folded his arms. Captain Harrison runs monthly stress shoots for sniper candidates, moving targets, time, pressure, fatigue. He's invited you to participate next week. No official scoring, just a demonstration. Harrison's gaze was level but cold. Most riflemen don't accept the offer. The course fails 60% of first-time candidates. You'd be going up against Marines who train for this specifically. I'm willing to try, sir. You understand, these are conditions designed to break focus. Moving targets, ruck marches, rapid transitions, physical exhaustion. I understand, she repeated. Reeves nodded. Tuesday, 700, range 12. Captain Harrison will brief you Monday afternoon. Dismissed. Outside, the dry wind carried the sound of distant gunfire. Martinez was leaning against the wall, waiting. Heard the news, he said. Harrison's setting you up. Maybe, Chun said. The stress shoots brutal. Most candidates fail. He's trying to prove you're just lucky. Maybe I was, she said, her voice calm. Either way, I'll find out. Martinez frowned. You're not even worried. Worry doesn't help, preparation does. I've got 4 days. That night, under the fatting orange of a California sunset, she began to run. Not to train for endurance, but to understand fatigue. Every hill, every mile under the weight of her pack would translate into steadier aim under pressure. 4 days to prepare for a course designed to make Marines fail. 4 days before she'd stand against wind, exhaustion, and expectation, and find out whether her fundamentals held when everything else fell apart. How do you prepare for something designed to make you fail? Maya Chun didn't train to win that week. She trained to endure. While most Marines practiced shooting drills, she studied terrain maps of Range 12 under a flickering barracks light. The course was brutal. 6 stations across 3 miles of rocky hills, 45 pounds of gear, shifting wind, and targets from 200 to 800 meters. Each night she ran the route alone. No spectators, no stopwatch, just the rhythmic thud of her boots and the sound of her breath. When she finished, she practiced dry-fire drills with elevated heart rate, simulating exhaustion. The rifle felt heavier, her hands slick with sweat, but her movements stayed smooth. Prepare under chaos, her father used to say. That's how you earn calm. By Sunday, rumors had spread through the battalion. Some said the sniper captain wanted to expose her. Others said the colonel wanted to crown her as proof that every Marine a rifleman wasn't just a slogan. Chun ignored it all. Gossip didn't tighten groups. Discipline did. On Monday afternoon, Captain Harrison briefed her at the sniper platoon's ready room. He traced the course on a sand-stained map. Elevation gain here, crosswinds there, moving targets on mechanical sleds. Average pass rate 40%, he said. Record 88% hits set by a senior scout sniper. Most candidates are grateful just to reach 75. Passing starts there. Yes, sir. Harrison studied her. This isn't about proving anyone wrong, Corporal. It's about realism. Fatigue, pressure, and uncertainty turn good shooters into average ones. I understand. His expression didn't soften. I doubt you do yet. See you at 0700. Dawn broke cold and gray over Range 12. The valley sat in a natural bowl, ringed by low hills that funneled unpredictable gusts. Marines gathered along the starting line, some as observers, some betting quietly on the outcome. Bradley, Martinez, and Williams stood together, their uniforms dusty already. Odds are 5-1 she doesn't pass, Martinez muttered. Bradley shook his head. She's not like anyone we've trained with. I'm not betting against her. When Chun arrived, she carried her rifle, a 45-pound pack, in the same calm she always wore. No sunglasses, no bravado, just quiet readiness. Harrison checked his watch. You're early. Time to walk the route, sir. Good, gear check in 15. Range Master Tours will score your hits. Staff Sergeant Dalton's on safety. Colonel Reeves will observe from the command post. Yes, sir. Harrison's gaze was clinical. Last chance to withdraw, no shame in it. I'm ready, sir. At exactly 700, Reeves raised a hand from the observation post. Course is hot. Harrison lowered his arm. Begin. Chun moved out at a controlled pace, boots striking dirt in steady rhythm. The first station sat half a mile uphill, the incline steep enough to hammer lungs and legs before the first trigger press. Most candidates sprinted and arrived shaking. Chun walked, fast, deliberate, breathing through her nose to keep her heart rate down. 8 minutes in, she reached Station 1. Tours waited beside a stack of sandbags and a scope. 3 targets, 300 meters, 2-minute limit. Time starts when you're set. Chun dropped her pack, settled prone, adjusted for the slight downward slope. The position felt awkward, gravity pulling unevenly. She exhaled, found the natural pause, and fired. Hit, Tours called. Second shot, same rhythm, hit. Third target partially hidden by terrain. She aimed for the visible edge and broke the shot clean. Hit. 3 for 3. Proceed. She slung the rifle, hoisted her pack and moved on. Station 2 sat across a rocky streambed, requiring a climb through broken ground. The wind picked up gusting crosswise, tugging at her sling. She reached the position. Standing shot, tree for partial rest, 4 targets between 2 and 500 meters. 3 minutes. The first 2 were easy, short range, minimal wind. Hits. The third target wavered behind heat shimmer. She waited for the flag to still, fired. Hit. Fourth at 500, heavy gust. She waited, counted seconds, fired during the lull. 4 for 4. Torres confirmed through radio to the command post. Copy, Reeves' voice replied faintly through static. 8 total hits. The third station was a Punisher. Kneeling position, no rest, 5 targets at 600 meters. By now her thighs burned. Sweat streaked dust across her face. She knelt, feeling the tremor in her muscles, and forced her breathing to slow. Time starts, Torres called. First shot hit. Second hit. Third took longer. The reticle wavered with her pulse. She waited, exhaled, fired. Hit. 2 minutes left. The wind shifted. Her fourth round struck low and right. Miss. She adjusted, corrected, hold. Fifth shot hit. Sixth hit. 5 of 6, Torres said. 13 total, 76%. Still passing, but the fatigue was setting in. Station 4 lay halfway through the course. 6 moving targets, 400 meters, 5 seconds of visibility each. Rapid engagement. She dropped to prone as the first sled slid into view. The moment it appeared, she fired. Hit. Second hit. Third appeared during her inhale. She let it go, better to lose a target than rush. Fourth hit. Fifth hit. Sixth hit. 5 out of 6, Torres confirmed. 18 total. Her arms felt heavier now. Her heartbeat thudded against her sling. The trail to Station 5 was nearly a mile of uphill sand and rock. She forced herself not to look at the watch. When she reached the crest, wind slammed across the ridge from the left, 15 knots, gusting 20. Targets at 800 meters. Sitting position. 4 targets, 5 minutes. Harrison stood nearby, arms folded. Most candidates start missing here, he said quietly. Chun didn't answer. She scanned the range, studying brush movement. Gusts, not steady wind, erratic, inconsistent. She waited for a rhythm. First shot, low left but within target. Second, center mass. Third, gust hit mid-shot, miss. Fourth hit. Fifth hit. Torres tallied the results. 4 out of 5, 22 total, 79%. Still above the passing line. The final station lay downhill near the starting area. She descended carefully, legs shaking from the effort. 15 minutes left. Station 6, 10 targets, multiple ranges, random positions determined by dice roll. Harrison waited there, the dice in his palm like judgment itself. Each number equals a position. You'll roll between sets, he said. Chun nodded, breathing controlled. First roll 5, prone unsupported. 2 targets at 300 meters, both hits. Second roll 2, standing unsupported, one of the hardest. 2 targets at 400 meters, first hit. Second barely, but a hit. Third roll 6, kneeling unsupported, her weak point. 2 targets at 500 meters. First shot miss, second hit. Fourth roll 3, sitting position, 2 targets at 600, both hits. Final roll 1, prone with improvised support. She used her pack, 2 targets at 400, both hits. 8 of 10, Torres said. 30 total out of 38, 79%. He turned to Harrison, passing score. The captain looked down at his clipboard, silent for a long moment. Colonel Reeves approached from the command post, binoculars hanging from his neck. Captain. She passed, sir, Harrison said finally. 79%, 4 points above the minimum. Reeves examined the score sheet. Station 5 was rough today with that wind. Only one miss there. Yes, sir. Torres added quietly. Fundamentals never broke down, even under fatigue. Reeves looked at her directly. Impressive performance, Corporal. Captain, your assessment. Harrison's tone was measured. She performed under pressure, passed on her first attempt. That validates her previous qualification. But 79 isn't exceptional. The record is 88. Chun nodded. Understood, sir. What can I improve? Harrison blinked. You're asking for critique after passing. There's always room, sir. He studied the sheet. Station 3 and 6, unsupported positions after physical exertion. Strength training will help. Station 5, wind estimation conservative. You favored safety over precision. Good tactic, but you can gain efficiency. She nodded once. Thank you, sir. Reeves smiled faintly. Captain, I'm assigning her as temporary instructor for advanced marksmanship. She'll assist your sniper candidates with fundamentals. Harrison's surprise was visible. Sir, our instructors are all qualified scout snipers. Protocol. She'll assist, Reeves said evenly. Not lead. Use her strengths where they fit. Her methods improved 1st Battalion's qualification rate by 30% in 2 weeks. I want that applied here. Harrison's jaw flexed. Understood, sir. Reeves turned to Chun. Report to Captain Harrison tomorrow at 0800. Yes, sir. As Reeves left, Marines from the observation area crowded forward. Martinez was grinning ear to ear. You just made me $80, he said. Nobody thought you'd pass. Bradley shook his head. 79 on your first try, that's unreal. Williams, notebook in hand, said quietly, You waited out the wind every time. That discipline's rare. Dalton approached last. His expression wasn't pride, it was respect. I watched you through binoculars from the safety line. Even when you were exhausted, your fundamentals never cracked. That's the kind of control we preach about but rarely see. Just training, Staff Sergeant, Chun said. Competition teaches focus under pressure. He glanced toward Harrison, who was still packing gear, silent. He expected you to fail. Maybe he still thinks I did, she said. But the numbers are honest. They tell the story better than words. Torres joined them, holding the scorecard. For the record, Corporal, that was one of the cleanest first attempts I've ever seen. Most first-timers score in the 60s. You hit 79 under full fatigue. Your real ceiling's higher. She gave a faint nod. Appreciate that, Range Master. As they walked back toward the vehicles, the valley around them shimmered in midday heat. Every bootstep sounded heavier now, but inside her, something lighter had shifted. Martinez broke the silence. So what happens now? You're training snipers. You passed his test. What's next? Whatever's useful, she said. If teaching fundamentals helps others pass, that's enough. Bradley laughed softly. You realize you're a legend already. Perfect 40 pass stress course teaching snipers. They're calling you the best shot in the battalion. Chun stopped walking. That's not helpful. Fame creates expectations. Expectations create pressure. Pressure breaks fundamentals. William smiled. Too late for that. Your name's already spreading beyond this battalion. Chun looked toward the horizon, the wind carrying faint echoes of gunfire from another range. Let them talk, she said quietly. I'll keep working. And as she walked back toward the compound, the sun caught the edge of her rifle, glinting once like a promise, bright, brief, unspoken. Sometimes, the loudest proof of strength isn't the noise of the shot. It's the silence that follows. Why did they stare at her like she didn't belong? The sniper platoon's training compound felt colder than the morning air. Rough wooden benches, scattered brass, the smell of CLP and sweat. 15 Marines, all male, all hardened by months of selection, turned to watch as Corporal Maya Chun walked across the range with her rifle slung low. Captain Harrison stood near the tower, clipboard in hand, expression unreadable. "Listen up," he called out. "This is Corporal Chun. She'll be assisting as a fundamentals coach for the next 2 weeks. You'll work with her on trigger control, breathing, and stability drills." He glanced toward her. "You may begin, Corporal." The silence that followed wasn't respect, it was skepticism. Chun set her pack down beside the firing line. "Morning, Marines," she said evenly. "You can relax. I'm not here to replace anyone. I'm here to help you shoot better." One of the snipers, tall and scarred, muttered under his breath, "We don't need classroom lessons." She looked at him, calm as stone. "You'll be surprised how many instructors think that until they start missing." A few chuckles rippled through the group. Even Harrison's expression twitched just slightly. She picked up her rifle and lay prone on the ground. "We'll start with the basics, prone position. Everyone set up." They hesitated, but the authority in her stillness drew them in. Slowly, one by one, they dropped to the line. "Watch closely," she said, leveling her rifle. "Trigger control isn't just about finger placement, it's about rhythm. Your pulse is your metronome. Listen to it. Match it." She inhaled, exhaled, and fired. The report cracked clean. Tor's voice came through the spotting scope from above. "Center hit, 300 meters." She didn't look up. "Your turn. Fire one round, make it count. Don't think about the next. Don't think about the wind. Think about that one perfect moment between breaths." Each Marine fired. Then again. She moved behind them, correcting stances, adjusting elbows, repositioning feet. "Relax your support arm. Stop fighting the rifle, it's not the enemy." Another Marine fired, miss. She knelt beside him. "What were you thinking about before the shot?" "Wind drift," he said. She shook her head. "You were thinking about the result. That's not focus, that's distraction." He looked at her, surprised. "Then what should I think about?" "Nothing," she said quietly. "Let the shot happen, don't force it, let it leave you naturally." By noon, the tension had softened. The Marines weren't smiling, but they were listening. Captain Harrison watched from the tower, arms crossed. For hours he said nothing, but his eyes followed every correction she made, every adjustment, every phrase. After the final round, he came down from the tower. "Gather up," he said. The platoon formed a loose semicircle around him. "Corporal Chun," he said, "your group improved an average of 6% accuracy in a single morning." "Not enough to pass selection," she said quietly. "True," he agreed, "but measurable." He looked at his Marines. "You'll work under her for the next week, half days, fundamentals first, advanced work later." The scarred sniper from earlier, Corporal Bishop, raised an eyebrow. "Permission to speak, sir." "Go ahead." "With respect, sir, we train for real-world engagements. High stress, rapid decisions, not static ranges. How's this going to help that?" Harrison looked at Chun. "Answer him." She didn't hesitate. "Because fundamentals don't break under stress if you've built them correctly. The difference between hitting and missing under fire isn't instinct, it's discipline. I'm not teaching you how to react. I'm teaching you how to stay composed when everything's trying to break you." Bishop frowned but nodded slowly. Harrison gave a single nod of approval. "Dismissed. Be here at 700 tomorrow." The Marines dispersed. The echo of boots faded, leaving only the crack of distant rifles. Harrison stayed behind. "You're good with them," he said finally. "I've been where they are," Chun said. "Not in combat, but in pressure. Targets that move, time that doesn't wait. The fundamentals don't change. The only variable is fear." He studied her for a moment. "You really believe that?" "I've lived it." By the fourth day, her presence no longer drew whispers. They began calling her Coach Chun, half-jokingly, but the nickname carried respect. She made them shoot blindfolded for trigger isolation, taught breathing drills under physical exhaustion, and forced them to fire at moving targets only after 30 push-ups to simulate combat stress. Bishop, who'd resisted at first, was now her most focused student. "You ever been deployed?" he asked between drills. "Not yet," she said. He smirked. "You shoot like someone who has." She didn't answer. Harrison watched from a distance again, expression unreadable. But when Chun wasn't looking, he took notes. Every time she adjusted a shooter's position or paused them mid-breath, he wrote something down. That night she found him still at the range, working alone. He didn't notice her approach until she spoke. "You're pulling slightly left." He looked up. "What?" "Your trigger fingers tightening before break. You're pulling left." He blinked. "You've been watching me." "I watch everyone," she said, smiling faintly. He adjusted his stance. "You know, I didn't want you here. When the colonel ordered it, I thought it was a PR stunt. But the data doesn't lie. Every Marine you've trained improved. Progress is contagious, sir. One Marine gets better, the rest follow." He chuckled softly. "Maybe, but you do something different. You make them care again." She looked out toward the range. They already cared, they just forgot why. He lowered the rifle and sighed. "You're right, most of us did." They stood in silence for a moment. The range lights buzzed softly. Then Harrison said, "Tomorrow we're running advanced drills, urban hide positions, multi-angle engagements. It's intense. You up for it?" She nodded. "Always." The next morning brought a low fog that clung to the ground, turning the range into a ghost town. The exercise was designed to simulate an ambush response, targets appearing from random directions, at varying distances, under a 60-second clock. Harrison briefed the team. "This is about composure under uncertainty. You'll have 1 minute to engage all targets. Misses cost time, hits save it. Chun, you're first." She didn't argue. She set up quickly, low crouch, rifle angled. "Stand by," Harrison said. "Go." The first target appeared left flank. She pivoted, fired. Hit. Second at 200 meters. Hit. Third popped from behind cover. Miss. She shifted, corrected, hit on follow-up. Fourth appeared high, fifth low. 2 more hits. "Time," Harrison called. 6 targets, 5 hits. Total time 49 seconds. Bishop muttered, "That's insane." The next Marine stepped up, 3 hits, 58 seconds. Another 4 hits, 55 seconds. By the end of the morning, the trend was clear. Everyone had improved. Harrison looked over the results. Average time reduction, 9%. Accuracy increase, 8. He turned to her. "I don't know what you're doing, Corporal, but it's working." "Discipline," she said. "They're not fighting their rifles anymore. They're listening to them." He nodded. "We could use that attitude outside, too." Later that week, Harrison called her to his office. Maps covered the walls, dotted with red pins, previous deployments, operations, casualties. He gestured for her to sit. "You know what this place teaches better than anything?" he asked. "What's that, sir?" "Humility. Every man who walks in thinking he's the best shot ends up humbled. The ones who survive long enough learn that precision isn't about ego, it's about clarity. You already understand that. Most never do." She didn't know how to respond. He leaned back. "We're running a joint field exercise next week. Live targets, simulated hostiles, timed movements. I want you embedded as range control, evaluate from the field. Think you can handle that?" "Yes, sir." "Good, because if you can handle that, I'm sending your name up for the division marksmanship trials next month." She blinked. "Division trials, sir, those are invitation only." "They are," he said, smiling slightly. "And this is your invitation." That night she sat alone on the barracks roof, the base lights flickering below like distant stars. The wind had cooled. Somewhere in the dark, the faint pop of rifles carried from a night range. She thought about everything that had brought her here, her father teaching her to breathe between heartbeats, the day on the range when everyone missed except her, the quiet satisfaction of proving herself not by words, but by actions. She thought about how much it had cost to stay calm in a world that only listened to noise. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to smile, not out of pride, but out of peace. In the stillness, she whispered to herself, "Don't chase the noise, chase the moment." And somewhere below, Captain Harrison watched her from the courtyard, a faint, knowing smile crossing his face. Because he finally understood what made her different. She wasn't driven by competition. She was anchored by purpose. By the end of that week, the sniper platoon's accuracy average had risen by nearly 12%. Command took notice. Harrison submitted a full report to the colonel, ending with one line. "Corporal Chun demonstrates composure under pressure unmatched by any Marine I've trained. Recommend her for division trials with full backing." And for the first time since she'd arrived, the respect she'd quietly earned began echoing through the ranks, not shouted, but spoken in low, steady tones among Marines who understood what real excellence sounded like. Not loud, not proud, just precise. And as the sun set over Camp Pendleton, painting the sky the color of burnished brass, a single truth seemed to hang in the air. Sometimes, greatness doesn't demand attention. It just keeps showing up. What happens when you're suddenly no longer the underdog? Corporal Maya Chun never liked attention, but at the division marksmanship trials, attention was all she had. The event drew competitors from every major base west of the Mississippi, Camp Pendleton, 29 Palms, Miramar, even Hawaii. Shooters, instructors, snipers, and weapons specialists. Each one the best in their company. Each one trained, tested, confident. And then there was her. She stood on the bleached asphalt of the open range, a sea of green and tan uniforms around her, all watching. Some curious, some doubtful, a few quietly impressed. Someone whispered behind her, "That's the female corporal from 1st Battalion, the one who shot a perfect 40. Yeah, I heard she beat a sniper course too." "She's not even a sniper," another voice said, "just a range coach." Chun kept her eyes on the horizon. She learned long ago that the only opinions that mattered were the ones written in bullet holes. Captain Harrison approached, clipboard in hand. "You ready?" She nodded, "Yes, sir." "You've got 3 days of shooting. Different conditions each day, wind, light, fatigue. It's not about perfection, it's about consistency." "I understand." He studied her for a long moment. "You know, most people here expect you to fail quietly." She met his eyes. "Then I'll fail quietly." A ghost of a smile. "Good answer. Remember, breathe between heartbeats." Day 1 started under an unforgiving sun. 30 competitors lined up in staggered lanes. 50 rounds each. Targets from 200 to 800 meters. The desert heat shimmered like molten glass. The range officer's voice boomed across the loudspeakers. "Shooters, stand by. Ready on the left, ready on the right, ready on the firing line. Commence firing." The air erupted in the crack of rifles. Chun's scope cut through the mirage, revealing ghostly silhouettes at 300, 500, 700. She focused on her breathing, tuned out the noise. First shot hit. Second hit. Third a miss just an inch right. The gust caught her mid-breath. She adjusted, fired again, hit. Her score climbed steadily, calm, methodical. By the end of the session, the scoreboard flickered with digital updates. Chun M4650, 4th place. It was enough to make people turn their heads. Captain Harrison stood beside the range tower, hiding a smile. "4th on day 1, Reeves said, scanning the list. "Not bad for a corporal among staff sergeants and gunnery sergeants." "She's not chasing rank," Harrison said. "She's chasing silence." Day 2 brought wind. Hard, unpredictable, relentless. The kind of wind that humbles even the best. By mid-morning, the flags along the berm were snapping like angry whips. Targets swayed. Dust storms rolled across the lanes. Half the shooters started missing badly. One gunny cursed loud enough for the tower to hear. Another threw his hat. Chun didn't curse, she just adjusted. She read the wind like language, the flicker of grass, the shimmer of heat. Her eyes measured drift instinctively now, built from hours of repetition. Tors, watching through a scope beside the tower, muttered, "That's not luck, that's control." Reeves nodded. She's compensating every shot, perfect discipline. By the end of the round, she'd only missed 3. 47-50, second place overall. The murmurs began again, this time not dismissive, curious. "Who is she really?" someone asked. "Corporal Chun, range instructor, never deployed." "Never deployed," another voice echoed. "Then how the hell does she shoot like that?" No one had an answer. That night in her quarters, Chun cleaned her rifle with mechanical care. She always did it the same way: bolt, chamber, bore, wipe, oil, reassemble. Each movement quieted the noise in her mind. But tonight, there was something different in the silence. Doubt. Not about the shots, but about what came next. If she won, what would it mean? Attention, headlines, interviews, photos. The kind of spotlight she'd spent her career avoiding. If she lost, it would be expected, easier, quieter. Her father's words came back to her, soft, patient, unshakable. "You don't shoot for approval, you shoot for truth." She whispered the words again like prayer, "for truth." Day 3. Final stage, unknown distances, moving targets, elevation shifts, the hardest of all. Competitors gathered before dawn, breath fogging in the cold. The range stretched miles across rolling hills and scrub brush. Each shooter would face 15 targets, no range markers, no spotters, only instinct, calculation, and composure. Reeves briefed them personally. "This is the division's final test. You'll have 40 minutes to engage all targets. You'll be graded on hits, accuracy, and consistency." He looked at Chun. "You're tied for second place. Staff Sergeant Colton's in first. You'll be shooting side by side." Colton, a broad-shouldered veteran with sharp eyes and a scar across his cheek, walked up beside her. "No hard feelings when I beat you, Corporal," he said with a grin. She met his grin with calm eyes. "No hard feelings if you don't either." He laughed, "Fair enough." The buzzer sounded. They moved into position, 50 yards apart. The first target appeared at 300 meters, bright white silhouette left of a ridge. Both fired simultaneously. Both hit. Second target uphill, barely visible. Colton fired early, miss. Chun waited, watched the flag, fired, hit. Third target moving fast. She tracked it, fired, hit again. The crowd behind the line murmured. 3 for 3. Colton was breathing harder now, frustrated. "You're just guessing the wind." "No," she said quietly, "I'm listening to it." By the 10th target, the competition wasn't close. Colton had missed 5, Chun only 1. Then came the 11th, small, hidden in shadow, a trap target designed to break rhythm. She fired, the sound echoed wrong, she felt it immediately, miss. The 12th appeared seconds later, far right, downhill, wind full cross. She corrected, hit. By the 15th and final target, the entire observation tower was watching through scopes. 800 meters, head-sized silhouette, full-value wind. She adjusted her scope, dialed elevation, exhaled slowly. Her heartbeat slowed until it almost disappeared. The rifle cracked. The target rocked. Hit. Silence. Then the range master's voice broke through. "Hit confirmed, time complete." Tors called out the final score. 14 hits out of 15, 93%. The scoreboard flickered again. Chun M first place, division champion. The crowd erupted in disbelief, applause, pride. Colton laughed, shaking his head. "Guess that answers that." Reeves turned to Harrison. "You trained her well." Harrison shook his head. "No, sir, she trained us." Later that day, she stood on the podium under the flagpole. The wind tugged gently at her sleeves. A silver trophy gleamed in her hands. When the photographers asked her to smile, she didn't. She just nodded politely. Reeves spoke at the microphone. Corporal Chun's performance isn't just about marksmanship. It's about discipline, humility, and quiet excellence. She's proof that calm is stronger than noise. Applause followed, but she barely heard it. Because standing there, under the flag she'd trained beneath for years, she realized something profound. Winning didn't feel like victory. It felt like responsibility. Responsibility to the Marines who still doubted themselves, to every recruit who was told they weren't enough, to every quiet shooter who thought silence was weakness. She stepped off the podium and found Harrison waiting nearby. "Congratulations, division champion," he said, smiling. She shook her head. "Don't call me that." "Why not? You earned it." "I just did what I've always done," she said softly. "Breathe, focus, shoot." He chuckled. "You make it sound simple." "It is simple," she said. "Simple doesn't mean easy." That night after the ceremony, she stayed on the range alone. The wind had died. The target stood still, ghostly in the moonlight. She lay prone one last time, not to prove anything, not to compete, just to feel that familiar rhythm: breath, pause, press. The rifle cracked once, echoing softly into the night. She smiled faintly. A voice startled her from behind. "Still can't sleep without firing one more round." She turned. Captain Harrison stood there, hands in his pockets. "Old habits," she said. He stepped closer. "You realize you changed a lot more than just scores, right?" She tilted her head. "What do you mean?" "Every instructor I've spoken to is reteaching fundamentals. You made them rethink everything, how they train, how they lead. You didn't just win a trophy, you reset a standard." She looked back at the distant targets. That was never the goal. "Maybe not," he said, "but sometimes the people least trying to make history do." The two stood there in silence, listening to the desert breathe. "Sir," she said quietly, "what happens now?" He smiled faintly. Now they'll want you to teach the next generation. You're becoming the standard." She nodded slowly. "Then I'll teach them what matters." "And what's that?" "That's stillness," she said, "the kind that doesn't break." In the weeks that followed, reports of her score spread across the Marine Corps like rumor turned legend. Recruits at boot camp heard about the corporal who outshot the snipers. Training programs rewrote sections of doctrine citing the Chun method: breathing, patience, precision. But to her, none of that mattered. Because every morning, before the sun came up, she still walked to the range alone. She still set up her rifle, checked her sights, took one long, slow breath and fired into the dawn. Not for competition, not for applause. Just to remember what truth sounded like when it left the barrel. And in that quiet, smoky stillness, she understood something her father had tried to teach her years ago. Perfection isn't loud. It's silent. It's steady. It's earned. Why did teaching feel heavier than shooting ever did? 2 months after the division trials, Corporal Maya Chun was reassigned to the Weapons Training Battalion at Camp Pendleton East. Her new title read, Marksmanship Instructor, Advanced Rifle Program. Her office was a small concrete room that smelled of solvent and rain. On the wall hung a faded photograph of a range in Okinawa, long grass bending in wind, targets barely visible. Someone had written under it in marker, "Precision is patience." She touched the words once before hanging her cover on the hook. Outside, recruits were already forming up, rifles slung, nervous and loud in the way new Marines always were. Young, eager, untested. Harrison had warned her before she left. Teaching recruits isn't like training snipers. You'll be their first lesson and their last excuse. What they learn from you, they'll take into combat. He hadn't meant it to sound ominous, but it did. When she stepped onto the platform, a hush fell over the line. Someone whispered, "That's her." She could feel the weight of their curiosity. The legend had grown faster than she had. "Good morning," she said, voice even, carrying just enough authority to cut the wind. "I'm Corporal Chun. You'll be shooting under my supervision for the next 12 weeks. A hand went up immediately. "Ma'am, are you the one who scored perfect at the division trials?" She paused, then said simply, "Yes, but that was one day. Today we start from zero." The first week was chaos. New shooters flinched, jerked triggers, lost focus. The same mistakes she'd seen 100 times, but watching them in beginners felt different. Every miss carried a story. Every hesitation carried fear. A recruit named O'Neill struggled the most. Thin, red-haired, barely old enough to shave. His shots scattered across the targets like buckshot. She knelt beside him, calm. "What are you thinking about when you fire?" He swallowed, failing, "Ma'am." "Then you already have," she said gently. "Think about one thing, what you can control. Everything else is noise." He nodded, tried again, missed again. She stayed beside him until the sun dropped low, until his breathing slowed, until his last shot finally struck paper dead center. The look on his face, that mixture of disbelief and quiet pride, was worth more than any trophy she'd ever earned. By week 4, her platoon was outperforming every other class on base. Word spread. Officers came to observe. Photographers asked for interviews. She refused them all. Her focus stayed on the line, the rhythm of shots, the correction of mistakes, the building of confidence one breath at a time. But late at night, when the base grew quiet, she sometimes sat alone in the empty classroom, staring at the roster of names. Half of them would deploy within a year. Some wouldn't come back. That thought never left her. She tried to ignore it during lessons, but it haunted her in silence, the knowledge that she was teaching not just skill, but survival. And the question that followed, was she training them to live or to fight and die better? One evening, she walked the range alone after sunset. The wind had died, and the world felt unnaturally still. She set a single target at 500 meters, lay prone, and fired one round. The shot hit dead center. Another, dead center again. She reloaded, fired once more, and missed, deliberately this time. The sound of it echoed longer than the hit ever did. That's what war would sound like, she thought. Perfect control, random loss. She packed up her rifle and turned back toward the barracks, her shadow stretching long across the gravel. A week later, during a qualifying session, O'Neill froze mid-shot. "Ma'am, I can't do it," he said, voice shaking. She crouched beside him. "What's wrong?" "I keep seeing the faces. Every time I look through the sights, I think about if it were real, if there was someone downrange." The other recruits had stopped shooting, listening now. Chun stayed calm. "That's a good thing," she said quietly. "If you ever stop thinking about that, you shouldn't be holding a weapon." He looked at her, confused. "Then how do you keep shooting?" "By remembering why," she said. "You don't shoot to take life, you shoot to protect it." He nodded, breathing slower now. She handed him a fresh magazine. "Try again." The shot cracked, hit. He exhaled shakily. "Ma'am." "Yes. Thank you." "Don't thank me," she said. "Thank your breathing." By week 8, Harrison came to visit. He arrived unannounced, leaning on the range fence while she coached. The recruits didn't recognize him, but she did. When the firing ceased, she walked over. "Didn't expect to see you, sir." He smiled. "Didn't expect to miss this. Heard your class is rewriting qualification averages." "Just fundamentals," she said. "That's your modest way of saying you're changing the system again." She shrugged slightly. "If it works, it's worth keeping." He studied her for a moment. "How are you holding up?" "Fine." He frowned. "That's not an answer." She hesitated. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm teaching them too well." Meaning, they'll be deployed soon. Some of them might use what I've taught them to take life. Harrison's voice softened. That's the burden of every good instructor. You can't control what they face. You can only prepare them to face it well. She looked out over the range where O'Neill was adjusting his sling, determined. I know, but it feels like handing a blade to someone and praying they only use it to defend. He nodded slowly. That's exactly what it is. The next morning, during a stress drill, one of the recruits collapsed from dehydration. Chun rushed forward, helping him to shade. The corpsman arrived within minutes. The recruit was fine, just exhausted, but the incident shook her. Later, alone in her office, she stared at her reflection in the rifle's bolt carrier. For the first time in years, she questioned whether the precision she taught could survive chaos. That night she called her father. It had been months since they'd spoken. He answered on the second ring. "You sound tired," he said. "I'm teaching now," she replied. "Feels different from competing." He chuckled softly. Because competition ends when the shooting stops, teaching doesn't. She hesitated. "How did you do it, Dad? How did you teach people to shoot, knowing what it might mean someday?" He was quiet for a long time. By remembering that skill itself isn't good or bad, only the purpose behind it. You're not training killers, Maya, you're training professionals. There's a difference. She nodded, though he couldn't see it. Sometimes I wish it felt like enough. It won't, he said gently, but you'll keep doing it anyway. That's what makes it right. Weeks passed. Her class graduated with the highest qualification rate in the battalion's history, 98%. Command commended her. Harrison sent a short note. "You've built something that will outlast us all." But the recognition didn't comfort her. What did was O'Neill. She saw him one last time before deployment. He saluted her with the sharp precision of a Marine who now understood both control and consequence. "Ma'am," he said, "I'll remember what you said." "What's that?" "Don't shoot to win, shoot to protect." She smiled. "That's the only way to win." He nodded once, then turned and boarded the truck. The sound of its engine faded into the distance. That night the range was empty again. The stars were bright, the air still. She lay prone one more time, just as she had so many times before. The rifle rested steady, her cheek against the stock. Through the scope the world looked smaller, sharper, cleaner, like it always did when she focused. But tonight she didn't fire. She just breathed. Because for the first time, she understood what her father had meant. Teaching wasn't about the shot. It was about the stillness before it, the understanding of when not to fire. A few weeks later, she received a letter. Return address, 3rd Battalion, Afghanistan. Sender PFC O'Neill. She opened it slowly. "Ma'am, we made contact last week. Long firefight. Nobody from my squad was lost. Your breathing drill saved me. I remembered to pause, to wait, to aim only when it mattered. I don't know if I could have done it without you. Thank you." Chun read the words twice, then folded the letter and slid it into her jacket pocket. She walked to the range, stood in the same spot where she'd first met him. The wind whispered across the grass, soft and steady. And for the first time in months, she smiled, not because she'd taught someone how to shoot, but because she'd taught someone how to survive. In the distance, a flag rippled against the night sky, its fabric catching the faint glow of the range lights. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. Why did the air feel heavier overseas? Corporal Maya Chun had been in country less than 48 hours when the first mortar hit. The sound wasn't what she expected. It wasn't loud so much as deep, like the earth itself exhaling. Then came the shockwave, rattling windows, shaking her bones. "Welcome to Helmand," the lieutenant had said grimly, half a smile under layers of dust. She'd come as part of an exchange program, marksmanship instructor turned field advisor. Her job wasn't to fight. It was to teach local forces and augment Marine units with precision shooting training in live conditions. But war didn't care about job titles. The base was small, isolated, ringed with wire, overlooked by bare hills. Every sound carried for miles. At night, the air smelled of diesel and sand. The platoon she was assigned to was already worn thin. Weeks of patrols, sporadic firefights, endless waiting. Among them she recognized a familiar face, O'Neill. Older now, leaner, eyes harder. "Didn't think I'd see you here, ma'am," he said, smiling faintly. "I could say the same," she replied. "You still breathing between heartbeats?" "Always." They shook hands, quiet understanding passing between them. Her first week was all observation. Patrols went out daily, convoys crawling across dry riverbeds and narrow streets lined with mud brick houses. The local fighters they trained with were raw, unpredictable, some eager, some indifferent. She noticed the Marines flinched at every shadow. Each corner looked like a question without an answer. In the evenings, she'd sit on a sandbag wall overlooking the perimeter. O'Neill would join her sometimes, helmet off, drinking tepid water from a canteen. "You regret coming?" he asked once. "No," she said, "but I'm learning fast that ranges and reality don't share the same silence." He nodded. "Out here, everything echoes differently." She looked out toward the horizon where the last light faded. Stillness is harder to find here, but it's still there, just buried deeper. The first engagement came on day 9. Their patrol was ambushed on a supply road 2 clicks east of the village. Small arms fire, tracer rounds, dust exploding from the roadside. The first Marine went down with a leg wound. The squad scattered for cover behind a broken wall. Chun's rifle training kicked in automatically. Range estimation, wind, cover. But this wasn't a qualification range. There was no commence firing command, just chaos. "Contact left 200 meters, someone shouted. Chun dropped to prone, scope scanning. Figures flickered between doorways, rifles flashing. She exhaled, fired once. Hit. The sound barely registered over the return fire. Second target, roofline. O'Neill called out beside her. She pivoted, saw movement, fired again. Hit. For 10 minutes the firefight raged, a blur of noise, smoke, and controlled chaos. When it was over, the silence felt unnatural. The lieutenant checked his radio. All clear, secure perimeter. Chun sat up slowly, ears ringing. Her hands weren't shaking, they should have been. O'Neill looked over. "Ma'am, you okay?" She nodded. "Yeah, just listening." "For what?" "The quiet after." He smiled faintly, still chasing stillness. "Always." That night back at the base, she couldn't sleep. The firefight replayed behind her eyes, not the shots but the faces. For years she'd preached discipline, composure, control, but nothing she'd taught could soften the reality of what precision meant here. Every shot she fired had been perfect, and every perfect shot had taken something away. At 300 she walked outside. The moon was low, the wind dry and cold. She lay prone on the dirt, rifle across her arms, not aiming, not training, just feeling its weight. She whispered to herself, "Don't forget what this means." Because in war, precision wasn't pride. It was survival. By week 3, word of her accuracy spread through the unit. They called her the Whisper, because she never shouted, never panicked, never missed. But she hated the nickname. It made the killing sound clean. Harrison's last words before deployment echoed in her mind. "You can prepare for chaos, but you can't prepare for what it takes from you." He'd been right. One evening she was reviewing training reports when the lieutenant approached. "We've got intel about an ambush route north of the ridge. Command wants overwatch tomorrow morning. You're our best shot. Can you take it?" Chun hesitated. Sir, I'm not officially assigned to combat. He met her eyes. And yet you're the calmest person in one. She nodded, understood. Before dawn, she climbed to the overwatch position with O'Neill and 2 spotters. The air was cold, the kind that bites through gloves. They set up overlooking a narrow wadi where convoys often passed. The valley was silent except for wind. O'Neill scanned through his scope. Movement, far ridge, 4, maybe 5 individuals. Chun steadied her rifle. Range 650. She adjusted elevation. Wind steady at 8 knots left to right. They waited. Through her scope, she saw the figures setting something on the ground. Too deliberate. Looks like a command wire, O'Neill said quietly. IED team. The lieutenant's voice came through the radio. You're cleared if you have positive ID. Chun exhaled, confirmed. Engage. She waited for the lull in wind, pressed the trigger. The first man dropped. The others scattered. O'Neill called corrections. She fired again, hit. The valley went still again. Targets neutralized, O'Neill reported. The lieutenant's voice came back. Copy that, outstanding work. But Chun didn't answer. She stayed prone, eyes still through the scope, watching the empty ridge. The spotter spoke softly, "Ma'am." She blinked, just making sure the quiet's real. After that mission, things changed. Her name started showing up in reports. Command called her an exceptional asset. Her team started trusting her instinctively. But the more praise she received, the quieter she became. Because every bullet she fired here meant something she could never undo. O'Neill noticed the shift. One night after chow, he found her cleaning her rifle in silence. "Ma'am," he said softly, "you can't carry it all." She didn't look up. "Someone has to." He sat down across from her. "When I was in your class, you told me shooting isn't about taking life, it's about protecting it." "It is." "Then remember that. You're protecting people, us." She looked at him finally. "You really believe that?" He nodded. "Because you're the reason most of us are still breathing." For the first time since arriving, she smiled, small, tired, genuine. "Thank you, Marine." 2 weeks later, everything went wrong. Their convoy was hit en route to an aid post, ambush from high ground, RPGs, small arms. Chaos. Chun's vehicle took the first hit, the blast rocking it sideways. Smoke filled the cabin. "Contact right," someone yelled. She forced the door open, grabbed her rifle, crawled to cover behind a rock outcrop. Rounds snapped overhead. Dust kicked up inches from her face. O'Neill was 20 feet away, pinned down. "We're cut off," he shouted. She scanned the ridge, 3 shooters in the rocks, distance unknown. Her scope danced with adrenaline. She tried to breathe, but her heart hammered too fast. Then she remembered her father's voice. "Between breaths there's truth." She forced the breath out slowly, counted her heartbeats, waited for stillness. The world narrowed again. Scope, reticle, target. She fired once. Hit. Shifted, fired again. Hit. Third target ducked, reappeared, fired wildly. She waited for the lull, pressed, hit again. The gunfire faded. The valley fell silent except for ringing ears and wind. O'Neill crawled over, panting. "You good?" She nodded, clear. He looked at her, wide-eyed. "You just saved the whole convoy." She lowered her rifle slowly. "No, we saved each other." Hours later, after the dust settled, the lieutenant approached. "You just prevented an ambush that could have taken half the platoon. I'm putting you in for commendation." She shook her head. "Please don't." He frowned. "That's not a request." "Then at least don't make it about kills," she said quietly. "Make it about composure." He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Composure it is." That night, as she sat alone on the edge of the base wall, she finally let the exhaustion sink in. The desert was silent again. the kind of silence that didn't bring peace but understanding. She thought about all the targets, all the scores, all the lessons. Everything had led here, to this balance between control and chaos, purpose and regret. And for the first time, she realized the truth she'd spent years circling. Shooting wasn't about hitting targets. It was about knowing which ones not to. She set the rifle beside her, watching dawn break over the sand. Somewhere beyond the hills, another mission waited, another lesson, another test. But she knew one thing for certain. The best shooters weren't the ones who fired fastest or farthest. They were the ones who understood when not to fire at all. How do you come home from something that never leaves you? When Corporal Maya Chun's deployment ended, there was no ceremony, no parade, just the quiet rattle of a transport plane and the heavy hum of engines cutting through a gray sky. The desert disappeared beneath her, swallowed by cloud. She watched it fade without relief, without triumph, just the faint ache of leaving something unfinished. Beside her, O'Neill slept against his pack, earphones still in. His face looked younger when he wasn't wearing the weight of vigilance. He'd made it home, they both had. But in war, survival didn't feel like victory, it just felt like a pause between storms. Back at Camp Pendleton, the noise of normal life was strange. The laughter in the chow hall, the idle complaints, the sound of boots on pavement instead of gravel. She was back in a world that had kept moving while she'd been gone. Command reassigned her to instructor duty again, this time permanently. Harrison had written a letter of recommendation before she left, best practical marksmanship mined in the Corps. The words embarrassed her more than they flattered. When she stepped onto the range her first morning back, the recruits straightened instinctively. Some of them recognized her face from photos and training manuals. She spoke softly, just as she always had. If you came here to shoot perfect scores, you're missing the point. You're here to learn control. A few recruits whispered to each other, stories of the whisper, the Marine who'd hit targets from impossible distances under fire. She ignored them. Because for her, the story wasn't about what she'd done. It was about what it had cost to stay calm, while others fell apart. Weeks turned into months. She taught, she coached, she corrected, but her eyes had changed. They carried the quiet weight of someone who had seen what precision looked like when it wasn't on paper. Sometimes during lessons, she would stop mid-sentence, glance toward the far hills, and lose her train of thought for a moment. The recruits never noticed. Other instructors did. One afternoon, Torres found her sitting alone after the last firing relay. The targets were being reeled in, the air heavy with cordite. He sat beside her without a word. Finally, she said, "Do you ever think about all the shots we fired over the years?" He smiled faintly. "Every good instructor does." "Do you ever wish you'd missed some of them?" Torres thought for a long time. Missing doesn't change what needed to be done, but remembering, that's what keeps us human. She nodded slowly. "I still remember the sound of the wind before every shot, every single one." He looked at her, his voice soft. "That's why you were the best. You never stopped listening." Letters from O'Neill came every few months. He wrote about rotations, about Marines he was training now, about how he'd started teaching breathing drills to new recruits overseas. "You were right, ma'am," one letter read. "Stillness is harder to find out there, but it's worth chasing." She kept every letter in a small tin box in her locker, alongside her old qualification targets. Sometimes she'd open it just to read the first few lines again, not for pride, but for proof that something good had come from all the noise. One morning she woke before dawn, restless. She walked to the range before anyone else arrived. The air was cool still, tinted blue by early light. She set up a single lane. No targets at various ranges this time, just one steel plate at 500 yards. She lay prone, feeling the old rhythm return. Inhale. Exhale. Pause. The rifle cracked, the sound rolling across the valley like a heartbeat. Hit! The echo faded, replaced by silence so pure it hurt. She rested her cheek on the stock and whispered, "You're home." Not to the rifle. To herself. That afternoon, she met with Harrison for the first time in months. He'd been promoted, now a major, overseeing training programs across multiple bases. He smiled when she entered his office. "You look different," he said. "I feel the same," she replied. "No," he said softly, "you look lighter." She sat down, "Maybe because I stopped chasing perfection." He raised an eyebrow and found what instead. "Purpose," she said. He leaned back. "There's talk of creating an advanced marksmanship course based on your methods. The Chun doctrine, calm, controlled, composure-driven shooting. They want you to lead it." She shook her head. "Not doctrine, just discipline." "Call it whatever you want," he said, smiling. "You changed how the Corps thinks about marksmanship." She looked at him quietly. "If they think shooting is about winning, they miss the point." He nodded slowly. "Then teach them what it's really about." The new course began that fall. She called it stillshot training. It wasn't about scores. It was about control, physical, mental, emotional. Marines would shoot fewer rounds but learn more from each one. She made them run until they shook, then taught them to find stillness again. She made them fire blindfolded to feel, not just see, the trigger break. At first they resisted, then they improved. By week 3, their groupings shrank. By week 6, their breathing matched rhythmically on the firing line like a choir trained by heartbeats. By graduation, they weren't just better shooters. They were calmer, more aware, more human. And Chun realized something profound. Teaching had always been her battlefield. Patience her weapon. Months later, she stood before a classroom full of instructors. The projector displayed a photo from her deployment, a dusty ridge, 5 figures blurred in the distance. She pointed to it. "This isn't about glory, it's about choices. Out there, every shot means something. Out here, you prepare them to make the right ones." A young instructor raised his hand. "Ma'am, how do you know when not to shoot?" She paused, looking at the image. "When the shot feels too easy," she said quietly. "If it feels easy, it probably isn't right." The room was silent. Then she added softly, "The hardest trigger to pull is the one you choose not to." That evening, after the instructors left, she sat alone on the bleachers. The sky burned orange over the mountains. Her phone buzzed with a message, unknown number, foreign code. It was from O'Neill. "Ma'am, it's been a while. I just wanted you to know we made it home again. The breathing still works. I'm teaching it now, too." She smiled. "Proud of you, Marine," she replied. "Keep chasing stillness." "Always," he sent back. Night settled over the range. The lights flickered on, turning the targets ghost-white in the dark. She stayed a while longer, watching the wind move the flags, listening to the faint clink of brass under her boots. Each sound carried memory, the echo of shots, the weight of silence, the lives woven between them. And somewhere deep down, she finally accepted what she'd spent her whole career avoiding. She wasn't just a marksman. She was a witness. To discipline, to courage, to consequence. All of it mattered. All of it stayed. Months later, during a quiet ceremony, she was awarded the Navy Commendation Medal for exceptional composure under fire and advancement of marksmanship standards. She accepted it with her usual calm, saluting sharply, speaking only when prompted. Afterward, a reporter tried to ask her how it felt to be the most accurate Marine in the Corps. She smiled faintly. "Accuracy isn't the point," she said. "Integrity is." Then she turned away, metal gleaming briefly in the sun before the wind caught her hair and carried the sound of her boots down the corridor. That night, long after the base went quiet, she returned to the range one last time. No targets this time, no rifle. Just the open air, the whispering wind, and the ghosts of every lesson she'd ever taught. She closed her eyes and listened, the way she always had. There it was again, the rhythm. Inhale, exhale, stillness. She smiled. For the first time in years, she didn't need the rifle to feel steady, because she'd learned the truth that all great marksmen eventually do. That the real target was never out there. It was always within. And when you finally hit it, you don't hear applause. You just hear peace. The next morning, her classroom was empty except for a note on the board, written in her neat, precise hand. Control is not the absence of emotion. It's the mastery of it. Breathe between heartbeats. Listen before you act. And remember, sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.